With casting for Wes Craven's new horror film nearly complete, the search was on to fill the final critical role, that of the masked, knife-wielding killer. Like many of the murderers from horror movies past, Ghostface would be played on screen by a Hollywood stuntman. But the threatening voice of the killer would be brought to life by another unseen actor.
Do you want to die, Sidney?
Roger Jackson, the perfect voiceover artist. His voice is just creepy and menacing enough. You hear that voice, it still gives you chills.
I was hired to play the scene with Drew Barrymore. And the intention at that time was that I was going to play the scenes and they would dub a voice in later.
I think Roger brought a real intelligence and, creepiness, probably much more intelligent than we had planned on.
It was not only his intelligence and creepiness that won the veteran voice actor the role, but his ability to completely terrify the actors he was playing against. In truth, though Jackson only played the voice of the killer, he actually was on set and on the phone during each take, but kept completely hidden from the actors, which only added to the character's frightening mystique.
Well, that's actually an interesting thing. Wes did not let the actors see who was doing the voice.
It was always a point to keep us separate, because my job is to frighten them during the filming. There is no monster as frightening as the one you create in your own imagination.
I think it was a really great choice of Wes's to not have any of the actors actually meet Roger, because I think it helped us all to stay in character and not be so familiar with him as a person.
The question isn't, who am I? The question is, where am I?
But it wasn't just physical proximity to his on-screen victims that made Ghostface menacing. It was his voice, cleverly enhanced by an electronic handheld device that further allowed the killer to disguise his identity.
Called Guess How I'm Gonna Die!
The voice box was, one of the smartest, most clever gimmicks, because that, hello, Sidney. It's kind of in Saw, you hear,
I want to play a game. I want to play a game.
the idea that anyone could be the killer, but just by putting on the costume and using the voice box, was so scary because you didn't know who it was.
The next step in the creation of Ghostface was to find the right look to match the menacing voice. A task which seemed simple enough, but became a source of creative frustration for the filmmakers and effects artists.
The script just says Ghostface. We had no idea what that looks like.
Okay, that's fantastic on the page, but how do you translate that into something visual?
Wes had to shoot the movie, so obviously it came into his mind, what does this guy look like?
Even some of the most gifted special effects artists in Hollywood were at a loss to find the right face for the film's iconic killer.
I know that they had a lot of people drawing pictures of scary things. You know, witches, goblins, monsters, vampires, and they would send them to Wes. Either Wes liked them or didn't like them.
Remember, we had our first production meeting, and I took all the sketches with me and showed Wes, and he's like, maybe this one, but I don't know.
So we had our art department making up masks, and we're getting closer and closer to the time to shoot.
Everything that we saw just didn't look good. It wasn't right. It didn't carry any weight.
Just none of them, to me, looked like the right mask.
Once again, it was being at the right place at the right time that presented Craven with a solution.
So we were scouting, and we ended up scouting in the house where they shot Shadow of a Doubt. In that house is where I found the Ghostface. There was a woman who was older, and her kids were grown up and had moved out. And I went upstairs. It was like her son's bedroom, and the ghost mask was sitting there.
So we took the mask and we sent it to Dimension Films, and they said, okay, we like that, so have your guys make one kind of like that because we don't own it.
And he brought it to us and said, this is what I think I want it to be. We sculpted all different versions, like one with longer chin, one with a furrowed brow, one with bigger eye sockets, one with smaller eye sockets, one with broader face. We sculpted and resculpted and resculpted and resculpted.
And none of the masks were looking good. You know, they just didn't have what that mask had.
I think I must have seen maybe 7 different versions of it before we came to the final, but there's something about the design that is really striking and really shocking when it comes up against you.
The thing about it is it just happens to be so archetypal. Many people compare it to Edvard Munch's The Scream. It has a mournful sadness that's almost dreamlike.
It was like a love affair with that mask. I mean, and it has struck everybody that sees that mask has been drawn to it.
With the look of the mask finally settled upon, the next step was to find a suitable costume for Ghostface.
There's no description of what the killer is wearing. So take the mask out of your mind and you have a guy. Wes spent a lot of time talking to us about what do we think he's wearing.
We went a long way down the road with white robes, because it was a ghost, supposedly.
Does he look like Casper? And obviously, you know, you put a guy in white with a white mask, you don't want him to look like he's in the Klan either. So what's he going to look like?
So we discussed with the costume designer at the time, and we came up with a black costume. It had a little bit of sheen to it and sparkle so that it would catch the light.
It was quickly discovered that the costume also needed to serve a vital plot function.
So we came up with the idea of covering the whole body, covering the hands, covering the feet, because it also had to kind of be a couple different people.
So it actually got down to covering every square inch of the killer with this costume that we devised.
The main thing we were worrying about was just, were people going to buy the ghost as anybody? And I think they totally do.
There is this kind of supernatural killer in a way. I mean, Ghostface, he can fall out windows almost like Michael Myers and walk away and not a scratch. There's never a bruise on the face from the fights that Ghostface gets in.
The face, anybody can put that on, which I think is one of the things that makes the Scream movie scarier, is that it could be anybody. And they're using this persona, this white, blank, Ghostface, emotionless thing, as this way to rip you to pieces. Underneath
The mask, underneath the monster that is out there, that horrible Ghostface killer is us. And I think that is, to me, the most important thing that we all have to do as human beings is stop externalizing evil and look inside of ourselves.
I am the darkness that exists in the mind of all people. I am not one person. I exist across the spectrum of the human psyche, and I will find a way to you.
With a cast, a killer, and a crew ready to go, everyone looked forward to the first day of shooting in the bucolic Northern California town of Santa Rosa. But actors and crew members who thought the peaceful surroundings meant a trouble-free shoot were in for a major surprise when all hell broke loose over the script and the filmmakers found themselves in the middle of a political firefight.